Hi, Studio Designer users. Thank you for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are located. So for today's webinar, here's our agenda, our introduction, training session, webinar instructions, Q&A, and next steps. Today's webinar topic will be covering top 3 strategies for running streamlined projects, reviewing products, proposals, purchase orders, and management with expediting. And a little bit about today's training session with system expert Christina Chappin, founder of AVID Operations, an interior design consulting agency specializing in process development, technology integration, and custom trainings. Christina has been in the interior design industry for 20 years, 16 of which she has been using Studio Designer. Her background is in business development and accounting. Towards the end of today's webinar, in the last approximately 15 to 20 minutes of the hour, we will be getting to as many questions that we have that come in the control panel box as shown here on the right side of the slide. So put in your questions, and those questions we will try and answer at the end of the webinar. So now I'm going to switch this over to Christina's screen, and she's going to begin the training. Good morning, Christina. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so I'm seeing the drop down. I'll be sharing my screen in a moment.
Great.
Okay, so everyone can see my screen, just making sure?
Yes, I can see your screen. It's perfect.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Sarah, for the intro. And hello, everybody. I'm Christina Chappin, and excited to be hosting this webinar, and especially with this topic. I've been in the industry for a long time and have gained a lot of different insight along the way. And one of my favorite things to do is to help designers with systems and structure and trainings. And specific to Studio Designer, which is what I'm going to get into today. And so the topic here today is top 3 strategies for running streamlined projects in Studio Designer. So Studio Designer has a lot of great tools, lots of bells and whistles, and I will show you my top 3 favorite features to start implementing, hopefully just as soon as today. And there's a lot of content, so I'll go through each thing, and then if there's any questions towards the end, we can review those, and I can slow down and answer any questions that you guys have. So the first one that I want to get into, the first strategy is products. And if you've been using products, you'll know a little bit about this. And if you're new to the idea, I'll explain why I love it and why I think you should try to implement it into your practice. So if I go over here to projects, I'm just going to jump into items for a moment. Very familiar screen, I'm sure, to most of you. On the upper right corner, there is a new items button. And if you click on that, again, probably a screen you're familiar with. And over here on the left, there's a section called My Products. So if you've overlooked it, which I think a lot of designers that I speak to usually do, today's the day where you'll kind of learn about it and how you can implement it into, again, your design practice. So My Products is essentially built by Studio Designer for those products that you sell frequently. So you always sell this certain light fixture, you always sell this specific upholstered piece, and there's so many specifications, and you want to just be able to use that again and again. Also, what we could use it for is templates. So it takes some time in the beginning to create that library, but creating a library of specification templates for all the different things that you order as an interior designer. So when you're ordering a sectional versus when you're ordering a table versus when you're ordering a desk, there's so many different specifications per product type, and it's hard to remember, even when you're an experienced designer, especially if you're a new designer, you might not even know the questions to ask. So having those templates are kind of those safety nets so that you can, without a doubt, always remember to check X, Y, Z when you're ordering a sectional. And when you are ordering a desk, now you're thinking about these other top 3 things that you don't want to forget. So I'll show you how it works from this screen, and then we'll jump into the products module, and I'll show you how to create your own. And so since I'm here, I'll use this drop down. And in this drop down, you won't see anything unless you're using this actively. And I'm going to filter out in my library the desk. So I'll go ahead and click on this. And before I click on it, just pay mind to what you see on the screen. And once I click on this, you'll see how it auto-populates. So I just clicked on there, and a few things auto-populated. And we'll go through this again when we look at products, but I'll point out a few things. Up here, description and side mark auto-populated. So great, that's just the name of this item. I can go ahead and rename it and start to detail this out. And the client description and vendor description, these are where the templates live, like all of the important data that you don't want to forget to tell the client on your proposal, that you don't want to forget to tell the vendor when you're creating your purchase order. So client description template, you'll see there's parentheses here. Those are options. So drawers include. You want to remember to ask that or look on the tear sheet. What does it include or does it include? And then you can use this as a template and delete whatever doesn't make sense, or add or keep whatever you need to. Vendor description, a lot of the same content will be here, so it might be a little bit of a copy and paste. And then there's specific to the vendor, what you want to tell them specifically. So a little bit different than maybe just the proposal section. And then the other part that populates is the notes. So I'll click over to notes. And these are things that I built in my library of what we don't want to forget. So when you're sourcing a desk, and that's when it starts, when you're sourcing, is the knee space going to accommodate the widest point of the desk chair that you're going to pair it with? And then these other points. So all of those things that and then when you're moving so fast, you just might simply forget. So then when you have this notes, it's your safety net, it's your catch-all. Yes, it's my checklist. I went through and I'm good. I'm good. Okay to order this desk or propose this desk. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to save changes. I'm going to go to projects, and down below the last item there is products. So when I click on products, this is the module where you actually start to build your library. And so at the very top, I already have it filtered. I guess I was just doing this before the call, for desk. And so you can use whatever filters you want up here. On the right-hand side is your view. So by default, it's showing me this card view. If I click over here, then I have a list view of all of my library items that have the word desk in there. So I'll go ahead and click on one just to tie the dots together or connect the dots. If I click on desk, we're going to get into this top portion when we create a new one together, but I just want to show you on the bottom here what I was just showing you on the items screen. So the notes is here, so we were just looking at that. And you can expand these two just by dragging. The client description, this is everything you're going to want to show the client, its proposal. Vendor description, that's vendor facing only, and that's going to show up on your PO. And then options, this does not carry over to the items, so I just wanted to take a moment to point it out here. The way I recommend using the options is when you're going to propose a desk, what else do you want to include in that proposal? So is there a hutch that you need to add? Is there a return you're going to need? Additional keys, if there's a locked drawer, do you want to order additional keys because that's an extra cost? You'll want to put that into your proposal. So again, just little checks, like a little checklist. What else do you want to include on your proposal? So you don't have to go back to your client. Here's your desk and all the parts and pieces you're going to need for it. So I wanted to show you that. I'm going to cancel out of this so that I can show you how to create an item from scratch. So I'm going to cancel. On the upper right corner, there's new product. And when you click on new product, we'll kind of just run through this together. So description and product number, I just usually do the same for both fields. So I'll just keep this one simple. And the product number, just to point out, when you build your library, and hopefully you'll get it to be very robust so you don't have to reinvent the wheel anywhere, your library will be populated alphabetically. So the product number, think of it that way. Do you want your list to sequence a certain way? Then you just need to think of it alphabetically. On the right-hand side, there is my vendor. I'm going to choose template, and it's a very quick address ID add. If you don't have template already in your system, just go to addresses, add template as a vendor. And then once you start to populate your project, you'll know you can filter by vendor template, and you'll know that those are all the items that you have to detail. And then some of these are not really relevant for what I'm showing. Those are more relevant for that specific product, that same light fixture that you always order. Maybe there is a purchase cost that you always have or what have you. But I'm going to ignore the fields that don't really apply to how I'm showing you how to use it as template. So we'll move on to unit. When I order a desk, it's going to be by each. Just to point out, if it's wall covering, you'll select by rolls, if it's sold that way, or square yards, fabric yards, etc. So I'll choose each. The other thing that you'll have to select is sales code. So this is my demo system. When you open up your sales codes, you might see something different, like a different list. And those lists should just be relatively small. But when you think of creating items, you choose a sales code for your products, you're choosing a sales code, and then you don't have to fill in that item, it'll auto-populate. So this is a desk, so it is furniture. And then down below, we've went through this section. Notes, you can type in, again, whatever you want to remember to check, to cross-check that safety net of items. And then client description and vendor description. Vendor description is grayed out, and there's a button here, copy to vendor description. So you might want to type some stuff out in the client description, and then when you click out, it's going to auto-populate the vendor description if this is checked. So at some point, you'll want to uncheck it because you'll have different specific information for your vendor that you don't want your client to see. And then there's finish, COM, dimensions. Again, that's more specific to a specific product, but not quite so much for templates. And then options over here, these are the considerations, how I recommend using it. What else do you want to propose when you're proposing a desk? And then you can save and close. And then here it is here, desk demo. And the other thing I want to show you is how to get this into your project. So it's living here. There's two ways. Since we're on the screen, I'll show you. And I guess I already showed you the other way a moment ago, but I'll do a refresh. So this one is add to design project. And if you click on this, you'll get this pop-up box, and then you can go ahead and say, I want this to go to client Miller, and the sales code auto-populated. The room list, my room list for Miller is Miller. The room is the library, the quantity, I just need one of them, and then I'll click on Add Product. And then it doesn't look like much happened, so we'll go to Projects, and we'll go to Items. And we're filtering for Miller already. I'll type out desk so I can find that quickly. And here's that desk demo item that we just carried over from products. And then the other way to do it, I showed you a moment ago, but new item, and then products. It's right here. So you're already in Client Miller, you're creating items, go ahead and click on that, and then you can choose your desk template here. Here's the demo. It doesn't have much content, so I'll just choose this one. And then once it's in there, you can go ahead and start tweaking and modifying it and making it specific to whatever it is that you're, proposing to your client. So since I always go back to that best business practice, how I recommend implementing this is one, starting off with your library and building that out. And if that seems daunting, because I know all the knowledge is in your head, it's just a matter of spending the time to create that and put it out on paper and put it into Studio. If you want to bypass that step, I do have a document for you. It's on my website, and it's about 48 or so templates that you can start off with. And so that's an idea for you if you wanted to implement this, but it's too daunting to create your library. Just purchase mine and get that into your system, and you can start using it right away. And then you could always make it your own. For my firm specifically, I do this or that or the other, or I learned this and I want to make sure that I implement that in my templates. Definitely make it your own. And then the other way to get this in your best practice checklist is to, at time of final floor plan, so you have your floor plan, your space planning, your iterations, revisions, and then once it lands somewhere and you have a final floor plan, a finalized floor plan, then you can take each of those items and just start right away building templates. So this is great for growth. If you don't have the time to do it, if you have someone in your office that's willing and wants to help, but maybe doesn't know interior design, maybe they're more administrative, they can even help you. So it does help for growth. It helps for consistency. It doesn't matter what designer is entering it. It's all being entered the same. And so you get that floor plan, and just right away you build out all of your templates. Here's the living room, and I have a sectional. I have a cocktail table. I have a side table. I have a chair. And then you just start building templates. And then thereafter, of course, you have to go in detail, but at least all of the templates are in there ready to go. So that's all I wanted to share about strategy number 1 and products and how you can implement that into your practice. And then the next one, strategy 2, is expediting. So I still get designers that will call and want expediting help. So they'll share that they are using Excel for their expediting. And those are my favorite clients because I get to show them that they don't need Excel anymore and, just rely on the system. I'm a big believer of, not duplicating work, minimizing efforts, and all of the items are already in Studio. So may as well start plugging in the expediting data so that you can just, at a click of a button, literally, you can have all the expediting information at your fingertips. So I do want to show you how to do that. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm not going to save it. And I'll go to Miller. Actually, let's go to Jackson. This is my test database, so I just have lots of random things in here. So the first one, Paul Ferrante, here's an entry console. If I click on this and I go to codes, on the bottom left-hand side, and I guess on the right, these are all the expediting fields. So this is where you want to start. CFA approved, and then we'll work our way down. I'll tell you how I use all of these different date fields. Best business practice, when to start expediting. Start it at your purchase order stage. So you're ordering the item, you're already in the headspace, You already have all the paperwork out, the vendor quote, the client proposal, whatever it is, the tear sheet, and you're building that purchase order. At the same time, start the expediting because you already have it all out and available to you. So CFA approved, let's think of this as anything that is going to keep this item from being produced. So before they produce it, they're going to send you a sample for approval, or they're going to send you a DFA, a drawing for approval, or a CFA, the cut for approval, or you still need to get to them nail head finish. So if there's any specification that's going to hang up the order, then you don't want a date here. There's really the CFA date, the CFA is not approved, so just leave it blank. And then if you leave it blank, you could run reports and you can say, okay, what CFA date is blank? Because those are the vendors I have to follow up with. So let's say it's an in-stock item, or there is no special custom finish, it's just as is, then go ahead and plug a date in here. And when you click in here, you get the calendar, so you could pick it here, or you can just also click on this calendar date or the calendar icon. And once you do that, then a date auto-populates, and it'll just be today's date. And CFA approved, if it's an in-stock item, it's not a critical path of like, well, what date should I use? It's just whatever date. It's just you want a date in there so that the field is not blank. Order acknowledged, we're going to get back to that. I'm going to tie this in with strategy number 3. So we'll come back to this. But while we're here, order acknowledged, we'll do that from the order screen. So again, I'll show you that later. Right now we're in the item. We're in the item level. So we don't want to do it here, and I'll show you why at the end here. And then estimated ship date. So you have your vendor quote and it's saying, 6 to 8 weeks. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to jump over here, but there's a lead time and there's a lead time unit. So go ahead and plug that in, 6 to 8 weeks, that's what the vendor paperwork says. And then there is a website I like. I've been using this forever. It's very simple. I'm sure there's fancy lead time calculators out there, but we're going to err on the side of caution. So if the vendor said 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to say, we're going to use that 8-week mark, but then maybe we need to pad it because internally we are going to have to review that PO, or we have to cut a check, or we have to wire payment. So maybe let's err on the side of caution and do 9 weeks. And then when we calculate, then our end date is 12/29. So then we'll go over here and estimated ship date, we'll put 12/29. And then this field has recently been added. It's estimated delivery date, which is very different than estimated ship date, and it trips people up. It's a communication breakdown a lot of the time between designer and vendor, where the vendor's telling you estimated ship date and you're thinking it's delivery date. So I love that Studio Designer now has a field for that to get you in that mindset of there's a difference. When is it going to ship versus when will it be here? So estimated delivery date, that's like the transit time, and it could vary. Maybe it's, coming from overseas, or maybe it's local, but you'll want to get that information from your vendor so that you can plug that in here. So 12/29 is estimated ship date. Let's just say this is an easy one to get, and we can expect to have it delivered by November 10th. And so to pause here just for a moment, estimated ship date, you're working with your vendor on when is it going to ship. You're making sure you get that final balance payment in, beforehand so it doesn't delay the order. And then estimated delivery date, now you're putting on that installation cap of I have to manage client expectations, I have to let the client know. Well, then that's when you're going to look at the estimated delivery date, and then you can build your installations around that. And then date shipped, not critical path. Sometimes vendors will give that to you. Sometimes they won't. You don't have to spend time to get that information. It's kind of like, it's there, it's helpful if you have it. If you don't have to, spend time finding it. But if you have it, great, plug it in. And then received and delivered, I'll tell you the difference. So received meaning that it has got to the place that you put on your PO, that ship to address. So maybe it's going to a warehouse. Once it gets to the warehouse, great, it's been received. Delivered is its final destination, so the client's house. That's when you would want to use delivered. Or maybe it's a fabric, and the fabric has gotten to the drapery workroom. Well, we can call that fabric delivered because we don't have to track it anymore. But we do want to track the drapery labor or the drapery lead time. So that's received and delivered. And on the right-hand side, there's expediting and there's freight tracking. So I'll go over expediting first and how I think the best use of this is to have it be the like most recent status, the most up-to-date note that you have about this item. So let's say you are expediting and you're reviewing, pages and pages of items. You want this field to quickly show you what is the latest status. So I'm going to put today's date. I'm going to put my initials, and then I'll just put the latest note. Per vendor, it's on track. Great. So when I'm reviewing pages and pages of expediting, I can quickly see, okay, I just reached out to the vendor. It's on track. Fine, skip. And you can go into the next line item. And the freight tracking is, if you get that information, it's really helpful. You have a place to plug it. So copy and paste from your email and put it there in freight tracking. And then the bottom, warehouse receipt number. So this is, again, a new feature in Studio Designer. I love that they're continually upgrading, but this is really helpful when you have a lot of items that are going to a warehouse and they're receiving everything for you so that you could then install, at one time, and you have to call for them. So you have to say, hey, warehouse, I need these 10 items. Well, they're gonna want their reference number. So you can put that here. So whatever they give you, you would copy and paste and plug it in here, and then you have an expediting report that you could run. And then you can get that expediting report over to your warehouse, and they have all of the numbers outlined and can pull those items and they're ready to go. So I'm going to save and close that. Estimated, oh, I love this. Estimated delivery date cannot come before estimated ship date. So here's Studio Designer helping you to make sure that you double check your date. So if it's estimated to ship, then the delivery date must be beyond that. So great, let's go ahead and say January 1, save and close. And then I'm in my items screen, and when I go to view, I just want to point this out because it's very helpful for expediters. Click on that drop down and scroll down to dates. And then when you do that, you have all your expediting fields. So if you're doing this simultaneously, like you're getting an email, it's giving you expediting info right away, come in here, add the information, and then you could really lean on this and you can trust the data that's in here. And these all filter up top. So if I say, okay, show me the received in order, when I click on it, it'll show me everything that doesn't have a date and then everything that's been received on the bottom. Or you could click on it again and it'll reverse that order for you. But then this is a great quick glance, and especially that CFA approved section. So these top 4 ones haven't been approved. We are waiting on something. And then we can see our quick notes here. So 1026, Christina Chappin, CFA ETA to office is 11/4. So great, I don't have to worry about it until it gets closer to that date. But then you can really start to lean on this, and it really is just a click of a button. And there are reports And I'm going to move into strategy number 3, but if we have time, I'd love to go back to the expediting reports because you have a lot of options there. You can really filter to extract, specifically what you're looking for. But for now, I do want to go into strategy number 3 just to make sure we have enough time to review. So there is on the left-hand side projects, there's a proposals option and a purchase orders option. We're going to go over both, but it's big picture overview management. So when I click on the proposal screen, then this is my test database. I don't have a lot of proposals in here, but as designers, you have multiple projects, you have pages and pages of proposals, and you want to know at a quick glance, what's the status? What's the status of all of my proposals? If you're using this field and the 3 things that I recommend on this field, then you can have that answer very quickly. So I'll walk you through this screen. At the very top, you can filter for whatever you need. So let's say we are just going to focus on client Miller. That'll shorten the list a little bit. And then at the bottom here, these are all the proposals I have for this client Miller. And there are 3 things that you want on this screen. So the first thing is a proposal name. So again, think big, think you have hundreds and hundreds of proposals out there. You have so many different projects. You want a quick way to look at this list and digest the information. So having a proposal name is critical. If you didn't name it when you created the proposal, you can do that here. You can click on the edit tool. Here's the proposal name right here. Click on edit, and then you can go ahead and name your proposal. So if you go to this screen and you don't have any proposal names like under this description, not a problem, you can go back and update it. But the best time to create a name for your proposal is when you're creating the item. So if I just for a moment, I can show you that in case you're not aware. Okay, so here's an item and it's not living on a proposal. So select item, create proposal, and then just don't overlook this step, proposal description. So we're going to call this, I don't know, foyer console. And then save it. So that's where you name your proposals. It's when you create it. But again, if you overlook that, when you're here, you can update it so that when you look at the long list, you can quickly see what you're trying to target or look for. Okay, so that's 1. Number 2 is you want a date here in the emailed column. So if we pause for a moment, I'm going to replace that word emailed for a moment with distributed. So however you get that proposal in front of the client, maybe it's by paper, in person, maybe you are emailing it, but you're emailing it through your system, through your email system like Outlook, for example. Let's just consider anything that's been distributed. It's out in the world. We want a date here. And so the only way to get a date here is if you email the proposal through Studio Designer. So as designers, I'm sure you have different ways, best practices for your firm specifically of how you want to get proposals to your clients. Some of you might email through Studio Designer. Some of your preferences might be to email through Outlook or to do it in person. So if you do it one of those ways, what I want to show you is how to manually get a date in your emailed column. And the only way to do it is to email it through Studio Designer. But if you don't want to email it to your client, email it to yourself. So we'll click on Proposal. Bottom right corner, we can click on PDF. So if you send to client, you would do it this way, and you already have then a date populated in that emailed column because you're doing it through the system. we're going to go to PDF. Make sure all your settings are accurate. Click on Next, and then you get this screen here. And you can put in your email address. Didn't like that. I'm trying to copy it. It's so long. Okay, so I got my email in there, and then it's just for record only. When I see that in my email account, I just know I'm just doing it because it's for record only and I want to get an emailed date in there. And then I'll go ahead and send email. And then it's going to say it's going to be publicly visible, which means that it's going to be on that client portal if you have that set up. So we'll go ahead and say, fine, send email. And then when I close this, I can see there's a date populated here. So really helpful. Again, big picture, if you have 20 proposals for one client that you just made in 5 days and you're issuing them as they're ready and you don't want to lose sight, what did I email? What did I not? What did I show the client? What did I not? Just use this field and then rely on that data. And again, that team communication. So if the project manager is presenting that proposal, the designer might be waiting, was it emailed? So if you can all agree internally that you're using this in this way, then everyone can rely on the data confidently. Okay, and then the last thing that you want to do is get an approved date here. So it's out in the world, it's being considered, everyone's just waiting. Has it been approved? Is it ready for ordering? So once you get that approval, then you can approve it. So you can click on this pencil, you can click on this proposal. You just want to be in the proposal so that you could approve it. So the upper right corner, there's an approved button. And then keep your eyes here too, there's approved date, which is blank right now. So as soon as you click on approved, then it's going to fill in the date here. And then if that wasn't the date, like let's say it was approved late last night, but you're just getting to it today, you want that date to be accurate. So you can go to edit and you can say, actually, it was approved yesterday. And then you can save that, close it, and then you have a date here. So it was approved. So that team communication, that it was approved, the team should also know that they can't order it yet because there's no payment, there's payment 0. But then you also get that green check mark, which I don't know is fun to see that, something exciting about that. And you also have these tabs up here. So if you're utilizing all of these different fields that Studio Designer has built for you, then you can click on these different tabs up here and quickly see, okay, what has been approved, what hasn't been approved, what's been rejected. So wanted to point those out so you can explore those in further detail. And then the other screen is the purchase order screen. So I'm going to go back to projects and I'll go to purchase orders. And this is very similar to proposals where it's high level overview of all of your orders and the quick status of all of your orders. So you can, again, use the filters up here if you just wanted to filter for one client at a time. These column headers work in that same way, where if you click on it, it'll sequence the data below. So you can click on emailed, and then it'll say, okay, these have all been emailed. The ones on top have not. I'll show you the 2 things that you want to use on this purchase order management screen. So on the proposal one, I had 3. On this purchase order one, I have 2. The emailed date column and the acknowledged date column. Those are the 2 critical pieces here, so that as an expediter or project manager, whomever is doing all of the ordering can quickly see what has been emailed, what has not been emailed, and then out of all of those things have been emailed, what has been acknowledged. So if we pause on this word for a moment, acknowledge means vendor acknowledged. So you sent it to the vendor. It doesn't mean it's ordered until the vendor tells you, yes, it's been acknowledged and here's the sales order, and they give you paperwork with an order number. Then you can feel confident that yes, the order is being, it's in their system, they've got it. And so you want to use this lightly. You don't want to just fill it in unless you have that confirmation that the vendor is in receipt of the order and that it's 100% accurate. So when you look at their sales order and you compare it to your purchase order, that it's a match. If it's not a match, then you don't want to date here yet because it hasn't been acknowledged correctly. So we'll do some of this together. We'll get an email date and an acknowledged date, and we'll go ahead with this top one, Paul Ferrante. So again, emailed, same principle as the proposal. You'll only get a date here if you email it through the system. So some designers are emailing it directly to their vendors from Studio. If you're using your Outlook software or Gmail software, whatever email that you use, then you still want to get a date in here. You just have to do it manually. So you'll go into order and you'll go to share/PDF on the bottom. You'll go to next. Of course, you'll make sure you'll pause. You'll take some time to make sure this is all looking good. We're just going to go quickly here to go to next, and then I can go ahead and type my email address. And again, it's just for record only. You don't have to do this step. But you're saying, when you see this in your email, then you could just kind of know it was for record only. And then you'll click send, and it says success on the upper right corner. And then when I cancel out of this, I get an emailed date here. It's this bottom one. Let me move it up to the top. Okay, so we've emailed that, and then let's say we got vendor paperwork and it was acknowledged and it's 100% correct and we're good to go. We want to acknowledge it. So I'm going to go into the order, and up here on the top where it says edit, I'm going to click on acknowledged here. This is an essential date if you want to get it as close to the date it was acknowledged as possible. Just because it might play a role with that lead time. So let's go ahead and say it was acknowledged today, and then I can save that and cancel out of this, and now it has an acknowledged date here. So if you realize there was an error and you have to go back and unacknowledge it, you would just follow that same sequence and remove that date. And so to go back, I have one more thing and then we'll talk about questions. But I told you I'd go back to that expediting field. And so if I go to projects and I go to items, and let's just do this first one, the foyer ottoman for Collins. When I go into edit, oh, and that's not an order yet, is it? Okay, let's create an order. Okay, so I just created an order there. When I go into edit and I go to codes, these are all the dates I was telling you about, and I told you I'd come back to order acknowledged, and I was telling you not to use it here. So this is within the item. You want to acknowledge the order, and when you acknowledge the order, in turn, Studio Designer is going to acknowledge the items within the order. So this date will fill, but not from here, not from anything you have to do here. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to leave this screen open. I'll go to projects. I'll go to orders on another tab. And then I'm going to find that order I just created for Collins. And it's here. And when I go to order, and what I just showed you, we're going to edit and we're going to acknowledge it. And then we can save it. And so now there's an acknowledged date here. So the order has been acknowledged. So if there were 5 items on this order, all 5 items should now have an acknowledged date on the item level. So when I go back here to this item, and I click on edit and I go to codes, a date has auto-populated here for me because I acknowledged the order. So wanted to tie that together and just go back to that point that I said I would. And so with that, it's 10:45 and I should move over to questions. And there's a few. So let's see, I'm going to start from the top and then work down. So the first one, how can we generate product invoices off of install dates? Okay, so you're saying that you've installed your item and now you want to create invoices, but you only want to create invoices on what's been installed, if I'm understanding that correctly. So if you want to do that, of course, you'll have to be using your expediting fields. And then you would probably want to rely on reports or within items. So if I go over here to Studio Designer, and I'm going to, let's use Collins, there's only two, or maybe, yeah, Collins is fine. If you go to edit and you say, okay, this has been delivered. And now when it's delivered, that means that it was, installed. And then that's what, when you're trying to invoice it, that's what I'm understanding from the question. So if you want to do it that way, you would put in your date here, save and close, and then you would rely on a report. You'd go to the reports, you go to your expediting report, and you'd say what was delivered, and you'd say yes. And what was invoiced, you would say no, and then you would have your list. So we can take a look at that. Custom reports and expediting. We'll take a look at this one over here and generate. I was just on Collins. And then you would rely over here. So invoiced. Let's see if I have invoiced. I don't see it on the left-hand side. So I'm going to add it real quick. So I'll say invoice number is blank. So it hasn't been invoiced. And then I will say delivered is not blank. And then it'll give me a list to work from. So that's one quick suggestion I could think of, and hopefully I answered that or interpreted the question the way it was intended. I'll move on to the next one. How do you add new items to my products? So, and I think I ended up going over that. So maybe the question came before I did that. But when you're in projects and you go to products, upper right corner, you can add product here. So I'll skip on to the next one. How can you add existing items, specs to my products? So how I'm understanding that is maybe you already have an item and you want to use that and create it, a product out of it. I would just copy and paste. So you would be in your projects, you'd find the item that you wanted to use. So if I go to maybe Jackson or let's say Miller, and go to desk, and that's my demo. So I don't have much content there, but you would just click on edit and then do a little bit of a copy and paste into products. So you can have this screen open at the same time as your product screen, and you can create your new product, and then you would just copy and paste right over from your items. So it's a manual process, I guess, in summary. And then the next question, can you add this template into an item you import from Studio Capture? Okay, so great question. Some of you create items based from Studio Capture. So go ahead and do that. And then once you create your Studio Capture, you can create a product using that item, and then vice versa. So let me read the question one more time, make sure I have that right. Can you add this template info to an item you import from Studio Capture? Okay, I think I maybe misread it the first time, but if you use Studio Capture and you get all of your data in as an item, through Studio Capture, then all of this is going to autofill like based on whatever you're doing the Studio Capture from. So then you might have to go into products and copy and paste specifically what you want to put in your client description versus your vendor description. So it would work. It's a little bit of using two processes at the same time. When you sell kitchen cabinetry, how do you handle that? I get an invoice for each cabinetry item in the kitchen. Project 3, filler pieces, integrated lighting, every cabinet, and its specific configuration. Do you create a single studio designer for each of the item elements or cabinetry elements? And then it looks like it maybe got cut off. But yes, so when you're creating a product, you'd want to create one specific to the actual item. So one for the filler pieces, one for lighting, and then one for cabinet. Because they all have different specifications. So, and I'll move on, and hopefully I'm answering these questions or interpreting the questions the way they were intended, but let me know if not. Then we have, is there a field, especially for custom products, to specify a due date for the purchase order as well as for the client estimate? Especially for custom products. Okay, so from what I'm understanding is you have told the client that they can expect an item in January, and separately your vendor is saying that you can expect the item, you know, on a different date. And so asking about a field specifically for the, because we do have one for the purchase order. When I go to codes and here's the dates here, you have these fields, but as far as for your client and having a field for what you promised your client, there's not something specific, but I guess what you're doing is managing that ahead of time. You're creating the proposal, and on that proposal, you have a lead time. So you're telling that client you can expect it within, and I recommend padding that. If your vendor says 6 to 8 weeks, let your client know it's 8 to 10 weeks. You want to allow time for your internal process and any maybe some administrative hiccups, that sort of thing. And so if you do that padding, then you can manage those client expectations a little bit better. But as far as there being a field in here of what you told the client, there is not one. That being said, you can use this field for that information. You can kind of get creative there. Where would you put the acknowledgement number for, and then it looks like it cut off. Unless I just can't see the rest of it. Where would you put the acknowledgement number for the, and then it cuts off. So sorry, Denise, I don't have the rest of that. Maybe if you want to retype it. Or Sarah, if you see what the rest of that says, let me know.
Yeah, I do, Christina. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right, so her question is for the order. So where do you put the acknowledgement number for the order?
Okay, got it. So if you are in projects, let's go to that purchase order management screen. And when I click on order number and I click on edit, here's a lot of different areas where you can put information that you've received. So here's vendor order number, where you can plug that in. If the vendor order, you know, that's a great question too, because sometimes vendors don't rely on your PO number. So like speaking a different language. So if you have their order number, you can get to your answer quicker. Okay, so thanks, Sarah. And then how did you get to this screen? I'm sorry, I didn't get to that live. So that was at 10:30 and I don't know what screen I was on. And then Okay, okay, I'm scrolling. If you email the proposals for a progress payment, does the email update after sending one the first time? So if you try to email the proposal again, so if we go to projects, proposals, for example, this one was emailed on 10/25. I believe it should. Let's just do it together. I'm going to go to proposal. I'll go to PDF. I'll go to next, and then I'll email it again. And then I've sent that, and then I'll close it. And then it did auto update. So the answer is yes. And then where can we find the templates you mentioned? So the templates you would have to build, they don't come standard with Studio Designer, projects and then products, and then you would create these from scratch. Or like I mentioned, just you can go to my website. I do have a very long, lengthy, comprehensive document that I poured hours and hours and years of experience building. So if you wanted just to start from something that I think is very comprehensive, I would say go, start there. Just have that document, and then you can build it in Studio Designer, or you can start from scratch, or also you can just start having your designers, slowly but surely create this. So when they are doing a desk, ask them to simultaneously create a product for that desk. And then you can build it, slowly but surely. And I'm just gonna scroll through. Let's see. How did you go to the expediting overview? Oh, expediting overview, I think is when I go to items and I go to Jackson, let's say. And then on the right-hand side, there's view. And if you use that drop down, there's one called dates. And then you can click on dates. And then you have all of the dates that you've populated here. And then you can, click on the headers, then it can filter and sequence the data below. You have the expediting notes here. So I think that answers that question. And then can you show again how you got the list of expedited items? So, and then that one got cut off too. I think I just have to stretch the window, huh, Sarah? Probably.
Yeah, stretch it. And then the screen that I see, I'm looking at the notification, this proposal is currently not publicly visible. So I'm not seeing you moving around in Studio Designer on my end.
Oh, really? Okay, so when I
Yeah,
go to projects and I go to items,
yeah,
or
I'm not seeing that.
nothing's changing.
Correct.
Okay, let me see. How about now?
Now I do see it. Perfect.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks for letting me know. So maybe I'll redo that last thing that I did. When I go to projects and I go to items and I filter for Jackson, on the
Perfect.
right-hand side, there's all of these options, and you can go ahead and choose dates from that list. So it's right here.
Great. And then I think we have time for about 1 to 2 more questions.
Okay, great. Can you show again how you got the list of expediting? Okay, so that's what I just did. Can you populate products using past existing items? So I think that's maybe a repeat question where yes, manually just copy and paste it into a product. What's the best legacy report for expediting? So if you wanted to go to reports and go to standard reports, and I'm already filtering up here for expediting, this top one is a fine one to use. That is going to give you all of the information, but then you can build upon it. So if you wanted to see something specific, you can start with any of these reports and customize it to your liking. But this one is a great starting point, the project worksheet expediting. And then what is it? Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. What is it?
Yeah, Sorry, go ahead. Last question for today.
Last question. Okay, what is the difference in entering a SOFA in items versus in products? So let's see. Okay, so the difference is if you're in projects and you're in items and you create a new one, you're starting from scratch. If you use it from products, then your template fills in and then you just have to modify your template. Okay, and there's a lot more questions. I'm sorry we don't have time for all of them, but I will take a look through and see if there's anything that I can get back to you personally on, but it seems like that's all we have time for. Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much, Christina. I do appreciate it. I'm going to share my last slide here for everyone today, which will be your contact information. I know that there was a few questions that came in for that. So here is Christina's contact information. Her direct email to reach her is christina@avidoperations.com and her website, avidoperations.com. And as always, you can contact the Studio Designer support team. Their email is support@studiodesigner.com. You can chat and email with the support team, or rather schedule a phone call as well. All right, thanks again, Christina. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Thanks everyone. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.